There is a concept in astrophysics, a terrifyingly simple concept, really, known as the Roche limit. It is the invisible boundary line surrounding a massive celestial body, a planet, a star, a giant, inside of which a smaller body, like a moon or a comet, simply cannot exist. If you get too close, if you drift inside that limit, the tidal forces of the giant don't just pull on you, they tear you apart, they disintegrate you. The gravity of the larger object is so overwhelming that the smaller object's own self-gravity, the force holding it together as a singular entity, is overcome. It turns into dust. It turns into a ring. It becomes nothing more than decoration for the giant. For the better part of a century, political scientists and economists have looked at the North American continent and wondered, why hasn't this happened here? You have the economic sun, the United States of America, burning with a GDP of $27 trillion, and right next door, practically breathing the same air, sharing the longest undefended border in human history. You have a smaller body, a distinct body, Canada. By every law of economic physics, by every rule of the Roche limit, Canada should have disintegrated long ago. It should have been pulled apart by the sheer gravitational mass of the American market. Its culture should have dissolved. Its economy should have been atomized and absorbed into the American industrial complex until there was no Canadian economy, only a northern branch of the American one. But it didn't happen. And the reason it didn't happen is not because of physics. It's because of politeness. It's because of a handshake. It is because of a very specific, very fragile assumption that has governed the Western Hemisphere since the end of the Second World War. The assumption was that the giant would be gentle, that the giant would not flex, that the giant would understand that having a stable, distinct, prosperous neighbor was actually better than having a shattered ring of dust. We told ourselves that this relationship was symbiotic. We told ourselves it was a partnership of equals, even though the math told us that was a lie. We believed in the special relationship. We believed that no matter how chaotic the world got, no matter how much the tectonic plates of geopolitics shifted in Europe or Asia, the bedrock of North America was solid. We bought their oil, they bought our cars, we watched their hockey, they watched our elections. It was the most boring, predictable, safe marriage on earth. But the thing about the Roche limit is that it isn't a negotiation. It's a threshold. And if the giant decides to stop being gentle, if the giant decides to flex its gravity just a little too hard, the smaller body has only two choices. It can accept disintegration, it can accept becoming dust, or, and this is the part the physicists never accounted for, it can fire its thrusters, it can reverse its polarity, it can do the one thing a moon is never supposed to do to a planet. It can walk away. And when the moon walks away, the tides on the planet go haywire. We have lived in a world where the gravity only flowed one way. We assumed with a breathtaking level of arrogance, an arrogance that is almost uniquely American, that Canada had nowhere else to go. We assumed they were trapped in our orbit. We thought, who else are they going to trade with? The penguins in the Arctic? They need us. They depend on us. We are the sun. But sometimes the physics change. Sometimes the floorboards give way under the weight of that arrogance. And that brings us to tonight. Because today, literally hours ago, the laws of North American economic physics didn't just bend, they snapped. The Canadian government, in a move that has left the State Department speechless and Wall Street in a state of incandescent panic, has effectively initiated a total economic decoupling from the United States. You are not hearing about this on the nightly news yet because they don't know how to frame it. They are calling it a dispute. They are calling it a temporary suspension. Do not believe them. What is happening right now at border crossings from Detroit to Buffalo, from Blaine to Sweetgrass, is not a dispute. It is a boycott. Canada, quiet, polite, reliable Canada, has just dumped the United States. They have stopped buying. They have stopped importing. They have implemented a strategic blockade of American goods that is so comprehensive, so surgically targeted, and so devastatingly timed that it suggests this wasn't an impulsive reaction. This wasn't a tantrum. This was a plan. Today, the moon fired its thrusters. Today, our neighbor didn't just build a fence, they locked the gate, turned off the porch light, and called the police. And the American economy, which is built on the assumption that the northern border is just a revolving door for our products, is about to realize that we are not the only game in town. We are about to find out what it feels like when the special relationship ends. Not with a whimper, but with the deafening silence of a closed checkbook. Now, if you are sitting there thinking, wait, Canada? Our Canada? The place with the maple syrup and the nice prime ministers? Why would they do this? If you are asking that question, you are part of the problem. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that as a diagnosis. Because that question, that genuine, baffled confusion, is exactly why we are in this mess. To understand the incandescent anger that is currently driving policy in Ottawa, you have to understand the last 20 years of American economic diplomacy, or more accurately, American economic bullying. Go back to the lumber disputes. For decades, the United States has relentlessly punished the Canadian timber industry. We sued them. We tariffed them. We dragged them to the World Trade Organization. We lost. We lost again. And when we lost, we just ignored the ruling and kept the tariffs anyway. We treated a binding international arbitration like a suggestion box. We told Canada, the rules apply to you. They do not apply to us. Then came the dairy wars. Then came the aluminum tariffs. Remember those? Under the guise of national security. We declared Canadian aluminum a national security threat to the United States. Canadian aluminum, used in American tanks, used in American planes. We told our closest military ally, the partner who fought and died alongside us in Afghanistan, that their metal was a threat to our existence. It was insulting. It was absurd. But we did it because we could. We did it because we thought, what are they going to do? Leave. We have spent the last decade tearing up trade agreements, NAFTA, then USMCA, whenever it suited a domestic political narrative. Every time an American factory closed, we blamed the Mexicans or the Canadians. Every time an election cycle ramped up in the Rust Belt, we slapped a new tax on our neighbors to look tough. We treated the Canadian economy like a piggy bank that we could smash open whenever we needed a few extra polling points in Ohio, and through it all, Ottawa took it. They grumbled, they wrote polite letters, they issued stern communiques, but they never walked away. They kept the oil flowing, they kept the auto parts moving. And this reinforced the fatal lesson in Washington. Abuse has no consequence. Washington learned that you can kick the dog and the dog will still guard the house. But while we were busy patting ourselves on the back for being America first, something was happening in the rest of the world. The global economy was decentralizing. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, were building an alternative financial plumbing. Europe was diversifying. The sheer necessity of American consumption was fading. Washington didn't notice. We were too busy looking in the mirror. We didn't notice that Canada was quietly, methodically signing free trade agreements with the European Union. We didn't notice they were deepening ties with the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We didn't notice they were courting India and Japan. We thought those were just cute little diplomatic hobbies. We didn't realize they were building lifeboats. We didn't realize that for the last 5 years, while we were threatening them with tariffs and walling off our market, they were preparing for the day they would tell us no. They were building the infrastructure of independence. They were laying the groundwork for a world where they didn't need to sell 75% of their exports to the United States. And this administration, this current leadership team, walked right into the trap. They pushed one time too many. They demanded one concession too many on energy policy, or perhaps it was the new digital services tax, or the water rights issue. The specific trigger almost doesn't matter. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. But unlike the proverb, the camel didn't just collapse. The camel stood up, turned around, and kicked the rider in the teeth. This is not a sudden snap decision. This is the result of 20 years of American hubris meeting the cold, hard reality of a diversified global market. We treated a partner like a vassal state. And today, the vassal state declared independence. So let's get into the weeds. Let's look at the machinery of this catastrophe. Because when I say boycott, I don't mean regular Canadians are just refusing to buy Heinz ketchup at the grocery store, though that is happening too. I mean a systemic, state-level rejection of American commerce. I mean the plumbing of trade has been soldered shut. How do you boycott an economy as large as the United States? You don't do it by banning everything. That's clumsy. That hurts you as much as it hurts them. No, you do it by attacking the physics of trade. You attack the logistics. You attack the margins. Here is what the Canadian government has implemented as of this morning. It is a three-pronged strategy that is honestly, terrifyingly brilliant in its design. Mechanism 1, the carbon mirror. For years, the US has threatened other countries with carbon adjustments. Well, Canada just turned that weapon around. They have implemented an immediate emergency environmental compliance tariff on all US manufactured goods coming from states that do not meet specific Canadian climate protocols. Which states? Oh, just the entire industrial Midwest and the South. This isn't a 5% tariff. This is a 45% surcharge on American steel, American chemicals, and American heavy machinery. It effectively prices U.S. goods out of the market overnight. A Ford F-150 made in Michigan and sold in Ontario just became $20,000 more expensive than a Toyota made in Japan. They didn't ban the truck. They just made it mathematically impossible to buy it. They used our own environmental rhetoric to strangle our exports. Mechanism 2, the supply chain guillotine. This is the part that is going to keep CEOs awake tonight. The North American auto industry is an integrated web. A single car crosses the border 7 times before it is finished. A steering wheel is made here, the electronics there, the assembly here. It is a just-in-time system. Canada has instituted enhanced biosecurity inspections on all cross-border freight. Biosecurity. It sounds boring, right? It sounds like checking for fruit flies. What it actually means is that every single truck, every 18-wheeler carrying parts for GM, for Tesla, for John Deere, is now subject to a mandatory 100% physical inspection at the border. Do you know what happens to a just-in-time supply chain when you introduce a 4-day delay at the border? It dies. It stops the heart. The factories in Ohio aren't being boycotted directly. They are being starved. They are running out of the Canadian widgets they need to finish their American gadgets. Canada hasn't formally sanctioned General Motors. They have just used bureaucracy to create a logjam so thick that the assembly lines will have to shut down by Friday. It is a chokehold disguised as paperwork. Mechanism 3, the energy pivot. This is the nuclear option. For decades, the U.S. Midwest has powered its homes and factories with Canadian hydroelectricity and natural gas. We take it for granted. We flip the switch, the lights come on. The Canadian National Energy Board has just invoked a domestic reserve clause. They are claiming that due to forecasted grid instability, they must reduce exports to the United States by 60% immediately. 60%. Think about the power grid in New York. Think about the heating in New England. Think about the data centers in the Pacific Northwest. They are turning down the dimmer switch on the American economy. And because of the way the grid interconnects are built, we cannot just buy it from somewhere else. You can't ship electricity on a boat from China. The pylons are physical, the cables are real, and the switch is on their side of the border. This is asymmetric economic warfare. The United States has the larger economy, yes. But Canada controls the choke points. They control the flow of raw materials down and the flow of finished goods up. By targeting these specific mechanisms, regulatory tariffs, border friction, and energy inputs, they are not trying to bankrupt the United States. That's impossible. They are trying to cause a seizure. They are inducing a stroke in the American commercial system. They are betting that the pain will be so immediate, so sharp, and so localized in the vital swing states of the U.S. that the political pressure on Washington to surrender will be instant. It is a mechanic of leverage. They have found the pressure point on the giant's neck, and they are pressing their thumb into it with all their might. Now, you might be asking, wait a minute, Rachel, if Canada stops buying our stuff and stops sending us stuff, won't they destroy their own economy? Isn't this economic suicide, a murder-suicide pact? That is the question Washington was banking on. That is the assumption the White House made when they ignored the warning signs last week. They thought, Canada can't hurt us without killing themselves. But here is the twist. Here is the maneuver that no one in our intelligence community saw coming. Here is the master stroke. While we were sleeping, Canada wasn't just planning a divorce, they were already remarried. It turns out for the last 18 months, Canadian trade envoys have been negotiating a shadow pact. It's a contingency framework. And today, simultaneous with the announcement of the boycott against the U.S., Canada announced the activation of the Transatlantic Pacific Bridge. It is a synchronized trade corridor agreement with the European Union and the CPTPP nations, Japan, Australia, Vietnam, and others. Here is how it works. The moment Canada slapped those tariffs on American goods, the EU dropped their tariffs on Canadian goods to zero. Zero. The moment Canada stopped buying American heavy machinery, Germany and Japan stepped in with pre-signed contracts to fill the void, with expedited shipping lanes already cleared. They pre-sold their export capacity. That oil that isn't flowing to the Midwest, it's already on tankers heading to Rotterdam. That lumber that isn't building houses in Florida, it's been bought by builders in Tokyo. They didn't just cut the cord. They plugged into a new socket before we even knew the lights were flickering. This is the secret maneuver. It's not just a boycott, it's a substitution. Canada has effectively hot-swapped the United States economy for the rest of the world. And the most humiliating part? They used our own logic against us. They used the logic of friendshoring. They went to Europe and Asia and said, the United States is unstable. The United States is protectionist. The United States is a risk. Come do business with us. We are the stable North American partner. And the world said yes. Washington is in shock. I have sources inside the Department of Commerce who are telling me the mood is funereal. They are running the numbers and realizing that Canada doesn't need to come crawling back. They have a safety net. We don't. We are the ones left holding the bag. We are the ones with the warehouses full of unsold goods. We are the ones with the power grid flickering. This was a trap, a carefully constructed, legally watertight, geopolitically supported trap. And we walked right into it with our chests puffed out, convinced we were untouchable. But let's step away from the geopolitics for a moment. Let's stop talking about treaties and tariffs and macroeconomic maneuvers. Let's talk about what this looks like on the ground. Let's talk about the kitchen table, because while the politicians in Washington are looking at charts, real people are about to feel the floor drop out from under them. I want you to think about a dairy farmer in Wisconsin. Let's call him Mark. Mark operates on razor-thin margins. He wakes up at 4 a.m. every single day. His entire business model, his mortgage, his tractor payments, his kids' college fund is built on the fact that a significant portion of his milk and cheese goes north. It goes to Ontario, it goes to Quebec. Today, Mark woke up to find that his market is gone. Not down 10%, gone. The orders were canceled at midnight. The trucks that were supposed to pick up his product didn't show up. What does Mark do with 10,000 gallons of milk that he can't sell? He dumps it. He pours it into the ground. He watches his livelihood drain away into the dirt, literally. And it's not just Mark, it's the packaging plant that makes the cartons for that milk. It's the trucking company that hauls it. It's the local diner where the truck drivers eat. It is a contagion of failure. Move over to Detroit. Move over to the auto workers. These are families who have already been through hell. They have survived recessions. They have survived outsourcing. They have survived the pandemic. They finally got back on their feet, and now they are being told to go home. Because of that biosecurity inspection I told you about? The parts aren't there. The seats aren't there. The microchips are sitting in a truck in Windsor waiting for an inspector who isn't in a hurry. So the line stops. The shift is canceled. If you are an auto worker in Michigan, you are looking at layoffs starting tomorrow. You are looking at a furlough that has no end date. You are looking at your bank account and wondering how you are going to pay the mortgage next month if the plant is dark. This isn't an abstract economic theory to them. This is a heart attack. And what about the consumer? What about you? Do you like fresh vegetables in the winter? A huge amount of that comes through logistics networks that touch Canada. Do you need medicine? Many of the precursor chemicals for our pharmaceuticals are processed in Canadian labs. We are looking at shortages. We are looking at inflation that will make the last few years look like a picnic. When the supply of lumber stops coming down, the price of building a house in America skyrockets. When the supply of fertilizer, Canada is a massive producer of potash, stops coming, the price of food in America skyrockets. This is the betrayal. The systemic failure of our leadership was not protecting these people. They played poker with Mark's farm. They played chicken with the auto worker's job. They treated the American economy like it was invincible, forgetting that it is actually made of people. vulnerable, hardworking people who rely on stability. Washington picked a fight thinking they were fighting a flag, but the casualties are American families. The casualties are the small business owners in border towns, in Maine, in Vermont, in North Dakota, whose entire customer base just vanished. The Canadians aren't coming over to shop anymore. The restaurants are empty. The malls are ghosts. This is what happens when you govern by ego. The leaders don't pay the price. The strategists in the West Wing aren't going to lose their homes. They aren't going to have to pour milk into the dirt. It is the regular people, the people who were told that America first meant they would be first, who are now last in line. They are the collateral damage of a diplomatic war they didn't ask for and can't afford. And the fear is palpable. I've been seeing reports from local news stations in Buffalo and Seattle. People are scared. They know that once a market is lost, it doesn't just come back. If Canada starts buying their corn from Brazil, they might never buy from Iowa again. Mark's farm isn't just in trouble for a week. It might be obsolete forever. So what is happening inside the Beltway right now? If you could put a microphone against the walls of the West Wing today, you wouldn't hear strategy. You would hear screaming. The silence from the president is deafening. Have you noticed that? Hours into the biggest economic crisis in North American history, and there is no press conference, no statement, just silence. That is the sound of panic. Behind the scenes, the phones are ringing off the hook. Governors from the northern states, Democrats and Republicans alike, are absolutely besieging the White House. The governor of Michigan is reportedly livid, demanding federal emergency aid for the auto industry. The governor of New York is demanding answers about the power grid. The Senate Majority Leader is trying to convene an emergency session, but they don't even know what to legislate. You can't pass a law to force another sovereign nation to buy your goods. You can't legislate away a boycott. Lobbyists, the most powerful people in Washington, the people who usually write the laws, are running around like headless chickens. The Chamber of Commerce, the National Association of Manufacturers, the Farm Bureau, they are all demanding that the administration fix it, but they can't fix it. Because to fix it, they would have to apologize. To fix it, they would have to back down. They would have to roll back the tariffs, roll back the rhetoric, and admit that they miscalculated. And in the current political climate, admitting you were wrong is considered weakness. So they are frozen, they are paralyzed by their own toughness. There is a frantic effort to find leverage. I'm hearing reports that the State Department is trying to pressure Mexico to intervene, trying to pressure the EU to back off. But it's not working. The world is watching the giants stumble. And frankly, the world is enjoying the show. There is no coalition of the willing coming to save the U.S. economy. We burned those bridges. The fallout is total political chaos. Finger-pointing has already started. The administration is blaming the previous administration. Congress is blaming the White House. The White House is leaking stories blaming the Canadians for being unreasonable. But none of that turns the power back on. None of that buys the milk. The illusion of control has evaporated. For the first time in living memory, Washington, D.C. is not the driver of the car. We are the passenger, and the driver has just driven us off a cliff. We are witnessing the end of an era. Tonight is not just about trade statistics or GDP, it is about the end of the American century in our own backyard. For 70 years, we operated under the assumption that we were indispensable. We believed that the world needed us more than we needed the world. We believed that we could dictate the terms of existence to our neighbors, and they would simply have to accept it because of the physics of power. Today, Canada proved that physics is relative. They proved that in a connected, globalized world, even a giant can be brought to its knees by a smaller, smarter, more agile opponent. They proved that dignity has a market value and that alliances are not guaranteed. The warning here is chilling. If Canada, our closest friend, our cultural sibling, our hat, can do this to us, who is next? If the United States is no longer the economic sun that holds the solar system together, then the solar system is going to drift away. We are looking at a future where America is isolated, not because we chose to be, but because we were fired. We were fired by our customers. We were fired by our partners. We are left alone in a room full of unsold goods and unlit factories, shouting at the walls about how powerful we are, while the rest of the world quietly moves on without us. This is a defeat. Let's call it what it is. It is a catastrophic strategic defeat born of arrogance. And as the sun sets on this chaotic day, the question isn't when will Canada come back? The question is, why would they? They have broken the Roche limit. They have survived the gravity. They are free. And we are just the giant, alone in the dark, wondering why the tides have stopped moving. Watch this space, because the map of the world just changed. Good night.